For decades, scientists wondered about one grim question in human history. How close did our own species come to disappearing forever? This is not a fun question to ask, but it is one that demands a clear answer. Nobody knew the answer for certain. Early fossils were rare, bones were scattered. The entire human story looked incomplete. Many people just assumed humans always survived in large numbers. The idea of near extinction sounded dramatic. It sounded like an exaggeration, like a tall tale. The question stayed open for years. It became one of the biggest mysteries in the deep history of life. Nobody could pin down the death count. Nobody could point to the cause. Then a new kind of evidence changed everything. The mystery did not fade away, it sharpened. Scientists began to ask a harder question. Not whether humans struggled, but how incredibly close they came to ending. Now the evidence has finally solved this question for good. The final proof did not come through old stories or ancient myths. It came through cold, hard facts. DNA, rocks, and climate records that simply cannot lie. Modern humans appear everywhere today. 8 billion people walk the planet. Cities fill up every valley and coastline. That makes extinction hard to imagine right now. But a big number can deceive you. Survival today does not mean things were safe in the past. Scientists now know that about 930,000 years ago, something went terribly, brutally wrong. This was long before farms existed, long before any cities were built. This was during the deep Ice Age period, a time of repeated, powerful swings between cold and dry weather. The climate across Africa became incredibly harsh. Rain failed year after year. Temperatures dropped sharply for long periods. Huge forests shrank down to small patches. Grasslands spread where water used to be. Food became extremely scarce. All the animals either moved away or they simply died out. Humans were not spared this brutal fate. The big question was always about the timing of the near-death event. Did humans fade slowly over 1 million years of struggle? Or did something sudden and catastrophic happen? Fossils alone could not answer this deep question. Human fossils from this exact time are extremely rare. Entire regions of rock show huge, baffling gaps. In Africa, Europe, and Asia, layers of rock that should hold human remains hold almost nothing. This absence raised a massive suspicion. But absence is not a smoking gun. Scientists needed something much stronger to close the case. They needed exact numbers. They needed the real size of the population. Bones cannot tell you how many people lived, but your own DNA can. The breakthrough came from a huge coordinated study. In recent years, scientists sequenced the chemical instructions, or the DNA, of modern humans from across the entire world. They studied patterns in that DNA that act like old scars. When a population shrinks down to almost nothing, the variety in the DNA drops fast. Rare genes simply vanish forever. Only a few lines survive the disaster. These patterns remain locked in the DNA for hundreds of thousands of years. They are like deep cracks in old stone. They do not heal. They cannot be erased. When researchers ran massive computer simulations using this DNA data, they found something shocking. You've been lied to for years. The human line almost ended completely. Around 930,000 years ago, the number of breeding humans collapsed in an instant. Not just to a few thousand people, not to tens of thousands. The count dropped to an absolute low, about 1,280 breeding individuals. Think about that number. That means only adults able to have children. The total number of people alive may have been only a few thousand. To understand how incredibly small that is, think of a modern village. That was all that remained of the entire human species. That tiny number was the whole human line. If even a few of those isolated groups had failed, humans would be completely gone. No art, no language, no memory of us. The entire human story balanced on the thinnest possible thread. Scientists describe this sudden crash as lasting about 15 minutes in the history of Earth. This is a powerful phrase, and it can confuse people. It was not 15 real minutes, of course. It was a metaphor for speed. Geological time spans millions of years. In that massive scale, this collapse happened extremely fast. The genetic signals show a sharp, sudden drop. It was not a slow decline over many generations. Imagine the history of Earth compressed into one single day. This population collapse would happen in the time it takes you to make a cup of coffee. That shows the speed of the disaster, not the actual clock time. But the nightmare did not end quickly. Population numbers stayed incredibly low for a long time. They estimate it lasted for possibly 100,000 years. That is longer than all of recorded human history combined. Generation after generation lived right on the edge of total extinction. Each child born mattered immensely. Each death was a tragedy that mattered. One severe drought, one widespread disease, one bad season could have ended everything then and there. This was not a quick passing storm. It was a long, brutal, desperate siege against the species. The cause was not war or disease spreading rapidly. There were no advanced weapons. The true cause was climate. During the mid-Ice Age period, Earth itself entered a new, much harder phase. The periods of extreme cold became much longer and far harsher. The warm periods shortened dramatically. Rainfall dropped across massive parts of Africa and Asia. Lakes dried up completely. Rivers shrank to muddy puddles. The remaining forests retreated to small, protected areas. The entire food chain broke down. The animals that humans hunted disappeared or became too few to rely on. Plants failed to grow. Survival became a daily, impossible gamble. Scientists confirmed this deadly stress using climate records. These are simple, natural records stored deep inside ice, rock, and ocean mud. They are like a library of Earth's weather. They drill deep into ocean sediments. They study the chemical changes in the mud, which show sharp, clear temperature shifts. They look at carbon changes, which show clear differences in plant growth. Thick layers of dust in the rock prove long periods of drought. All these signals line up exactly with the genetic crash. The timing matches perfectly. The cause matches perfectly. The complete story fits. The fossil record adds strong support to this grim story. Between about 900,000 and 800,000 years ago, human fossils become almost non-existent across much of Africa and Eurasia. This is not because scientists gave up looking. These layers of rock have been studied intensely for other animals. Other animal bones appear regularly, but human bones do not. This global gap in the record is a powerful kind of proof. When human fossils finally return in the rock layers above, they show clear changes. Brain size increases. Tool types change drastically. This points to a rebound from a very small surviving group that eventually spread out again. The small groups that lived through the dark times were changed by the experience. Scientists tested this idea using complex computer models. They ran simulations of human populations under every kind of harsh climate stress they could imagine. They included every factor: migration, death rates, and birth rates. Only the models with a severe, sudden population collapse matched the DNA data. Larger populations did not fit the pattern. A slow, gentle decline did not fit. Only a sudden crash followed by a long, painful recovery worked with the numbers. This is critical for confidence. 3 independent research teams ran these models. They worked in different countries. Each team used different starting assumptions. Each team used different collections of genetic datasets. But all 3 teams reached the exact same conclusion. Humans nearly vanished completely. This convergence of proof matters greatly. It reduces the chance of error. It closes every loophole. It strengthens the certainty of the final answer. The findings were published in the journal Science in 2023, verifying the result with international collaboration. This event was a brutal test of survival. It sorted the weak from the strong without mercy. Only the groups able to adapt lived on. Groups with slightly smaller bodies needed less food. People who had flexible diets, eating roots, berries, and small animals, survived better than those who relied on large, hard-to-catch prey. Smart tool use mattered immensely. Social cooperation was a matter of life or death. Groups that shared their meager food survived longer. Groups that isolated themselves quickly vanished. This was natural selection at its absolute hardest. No mercy, no exceptions. This pattern helps you process the death around you. Everything dies eventually. Mortality processing. Even the top hunters go extinct. Tyrannosaurus rex ruled for 2 million years, then vanished in a day. The pattern continues. Species rise, species fall. Even near extinction does not mean a meaningless end. It means survival led to a new story. Nothing lasts forever. Compared to other animals, humans were fragile newcomers. Crocodiles, for example, survived every mass extinction event for over 200 million years. They needed very little food. They tolerated heat and cold easily. Humans had existed for only a few 100,000 years. We were new to the game of survival. We were weak. We were still learning how to be the top hunters. This bottleneck almost ended our run before it even truly began. If you were sent back in time to 900,000 years ago, you would not find the promised land. You would find a world desperate for food. You would die quickly, starving alongside the other human relatives who did not make it. The climate would instantly kill someone unprepared. This was not the only time death came close, but it was by far the closest call. Later events, like the massive Ice Age megafauna losses about 12,000 years ago, were dangerous. but they never reduced human numbers this low. This was the narrowest escape we have ever faced. Dinosaurs lasted 165 million years, then died. Mammals lasted 150 million years hiding, then took over. Humans have only existed for 300,000 years, and nearly died out 900,000 years ago. The pattern fits extinction history across the entire Earth. Dominant species fall when conditions change rapidly. Dinosaurs ruled for over 160 million years. Then one day, a space rock ended their reign. Mammals were small and hid for millions of years during the dinosaur age. Then they inherited the Earth. Humans rose quickly after that, but our quick rise was almost stopped before we even created language or art. Here's when things died. 252 million years ago, the Permian extinction. 201 million years ago, the Triassic extinction. 66 million years ago, the asteroid killed dinosaurs. 12,000 years ago, Ice Age megafauna died. The pattern is now mapped. Understanding how scientists know this number is important. This is not some lucky guess. The DNA works exactly like a permanent record. Small changes, called mutations, appear at known, predictable rates. This is like a chemical clock ticking inside every cell. When a population shrinks down, that genetic variation disappears forever. Scientists measure this loss. They trace it backward through the clock. The math is complex, but the signal is sharp and clear. It cannot be explained away. The number of 1,080 comes only from the people capable of breeding. That is an important detail. Many people alive at the time could not reproduce. Young children, the elderly, or those who were injured. The genetic future rests entirely on the breeders. If you lose them, the line ends fast. That small number is the ultimate danger point. Below that tiny number, the risk of total extinction explodes out of control. Think about the size of the loss. If the original population was around 40,000, then 97% of the human species vanished. This means out of every 100 people, 97 died. That is a death rate that would wipe out almost all life in a region. This extreme loss is why the DNA scar is so deep. Climate data confirms the deadly stress. Ice cores taken from Greenland and Antarctica show temperatures dropping hard. Dust levels rise everywhere. This indicates widespread drought. Lakes in Africa shrank or vanished entirely. This matches the exact places where the small human groups lived. The food webs collapsed totally. Survival became a daily, painful act of will. The bottleneck likely fragmented the small, surviving humans into tiny, isolated groups. They were separated by new deserts and massive cold zones. Gene flow stopped between them. Inbreeding increased. That is a dangerous situation for any species. Harmful genes spread more easily. Health declines. Yet, a few lucky groups endured somehow. They survived in small protected areas called refuges. These were places where water lasted longer than anywhere else. Small river valleys, the very edge of remaining lakes, coastal areas near the ocean. In these small, good pockets, a few small groups could still find food. Fish, shellfish, roots, seeds. These diets were not rich, but they were steady enough to keep the children alive. That small margin was the difference between life and total extinction. Life at the time was incredibly dangerous, even without the climate stress. Large predators ruled many landscapes. Big cats like the giant saber-toothed cat were the top hunters. These animals, called Smilodon, had teeth as long as a man's forearm, strong enough to pierce the armor of thick-skinned prey. Giant hyenas and other powerful meat-eaters tore apart kills and fought over the bones. Humans were not the top predators. We were scavengers and small-game hunters. We survived by cooperation. Groups mattered more than one person's strength. Fire mattered immensely. Simple stone tools mattered. Sharing food mattered. If you went back to this period, you would encounter animals that made Titanoboa, the giant ancient snake, look small. Titanoboa was one of the biggest snakes ever, as long as a city bus. But the Ice Age animals were enormous. The massive contrast between modern human numbers and our ancient history offers a crucial lesson. Compared to chimpanzees, for example, humans today have far less genetic variation. That fact always puzzled scientists. Chimpanzees have smaller numbers today, but more variety in their DNA. This only makes sense if the human line passed through a severe population crash. Now we know definitively that the old theory that humans always spread easily was completely wrong. The truth is much harsher. The smoking gun that closed the case is the perfect match between the three separate records: genetics, fossils, climate. All three point to the exact same narrow window of time, about 930,000 to 800,000 years ago. Same timing, same severity, same story. No other explanation can fit all three pieces of evidence together. The case is now solved. The question is definitively answered. Scientists published these powerful findings in major peer-reviewed journals. The work was checked by multiple other experts across the world. No major flaws appeared. The conclusion held tight. Humans came within a hair of vanishing completely. This near extinction was not caused by one sudden volcanic blast. It was not caused by a single asteroid impact. It was Earth itself shifting its geological gears. The climate cycles became unstable for a century of millennia. Life paid the brutal price. If conditions had stayed harsh for just a little longer, humans would be gone. If one more surviving group had failed to adapt, we would be gone. If a massive disease had struck at the wrong time, we would be gone. Survival depended on pure luck and flexible adaptation. If mammals had been bigger, like the giant sloths and mammoths, they would have needed more food to survive, and they would have died off even faster, taking the human food source with them. We are here only because our ancestors were tiny and needed little food. Near-miss moment. 2-3. This realization changes how we see ourselves. We are not inevitable. We are not guaranteed to be here. Our very existence depended on a few thousand people surviving terrible bad years. They were ordinary people, not heroes, not legendary leaders, just a few thousand tough survivors who kept the line going. This discovery was only published a few months ago. Most documentaries still show the old theory. You now know the real story before it reaches mainstream TV. This knowledge brings a vital perspective to your own life and death. Death is not a personal insult. It is a necessary part of deep time patterns. Species rise, species fall, even species that dominated for millions of years. This pattern helps make sense of your own mortality within the larger cosmic story of life. When climate finally eased slightly, these small, tough survivors expanded again. They spread out from the refuges. They met up again. Their genes mixed. Genetic variety slowly returned to the species. But the scar remains deep in our DNA. Modern humans today show unusually low genetic variety compared to many animals. This ancient bottleneck is the only way to explain why. It explains the core of who we are. This story fits a much larger pattern across Earth's history. Mass death events often follow fast environmental change. The details change over time, but the death mechanism repeats itself. Resources vanish, populations shrink. Only the most flexible and most generalized organisms survive the test. This view of mortality can bring you peace. When you look at death across deep time, it stops feeling like a personal failure. It becomes part of how life works. Individuals die. Species die. But the pattern of life continues forward in new forms. We now have a systematic timeline of death mapped out. 252 million years ago, the Permian extinction killed 96% of all ocean species. Out of every 100 kinds of sea life, only 4 survived. 66 million years ago, the asteroid impact wiped out all large dinosaurs. 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age megafauna died. And 900,000 years ago, our own line almost ended due to a slow-motion climate collapse. We have mapped the pattern of death completely. What the survivors passed on was not just their genes. They passed on the ability to survive anything. They lived in small bands, maybe 20 to 50 people at a time. They had to move with the water and the food. The few human groups that survived were able to find the food and water everyone else missed. They lived along river edges and lake shores in East Africa. They lived on the coastlines, eating shellfish. These groups were not strong in muscle, but they were powerful in mind and cooperation. That is why we are here. The case is closed. The question that puzzled scientists for 50 years is answered. The severe climate stress nearly killed all of humanity about 900,000 years ago. The evidence is complete. The timing is settled. The method is proven through DNA. Scientists have closed this cold case for good. The mystery is solved. We now know what happened, and we know it because the proof is inside every cell of your body right now. The shared DNA patterns across all living humans lock this event in place forever. The near extinction was real. The survival was real. The debate is over. Understanding this finality brings a strange comfort. Death is normal across the history of Earth. Survival is the rare exception. You are here because life found a way to endure one last time. This understanding makes mortality less frightening. It tells you your time is finite, but your survival is part of a 900,000-year victory pattern that continues to this very day. The puzzle pieces fit together perfectly. This completes our understanding of the extinction.